Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is the Introduction to Working with Rainier Guest Services. We're going to allow just a minute or two for additional attendees to come in, and then we'll get started this morning. Good morning. For those of you just joining, this is IANTA's webinar series, Introduction to Working with Rainier Guest Services. We're just waiting for a few more people to pop into the webinar this morning. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the Introduction to Working with Rainier Guest Services. My name is Sherry Rupert, and I'm the CEO for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, or IANTA. I am Paiute and Washoe from Nevada, but coming to you from IANTA's headquarters in Albuquerque, New Mexico this morning. For more than 25 years, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association has served as the only national organization dedicated to advancing cultural heritage tourism in Native nations and communities across the United States. Established by tribes for tribes to address inequities in the tourism system, IANTA is a 501c3 national nonprofit governed by an all-Native board of directors and serves as a united voice for the $15.7 billion Native hospitality sector. IANTA's successful legislative work led to the industry-changing Native American Tourism and Improving Visitor Experience Act, or Native Act funding in 2018, as Indian country tourism was recognized through federal appropriations via Native Act implementation. IANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values, while helping American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian businesses become market and export ready for domestic and international markets. Tribes who are looking to start or expand their cultural tourism footprint can find resources at www.ianta.org, and visitors interested in learning more about Native culture can visit nativeamerica.travel. We want this discussion this morning to be as information as possible, so we're asking that you put your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So I would like to introduce our speaker this morning, Brandy. Brandy is an accomplished professional with extensive experience in multi-unit operations, focusing on quality assurance, core processes, strategic planning and implementation, health and safety compliance, environmental compliance, project management, and enhancing partnerships. Brandy has spent the last 17 plus years in concessions management across the country in multiple national parks, including temporary task force assignments. Initially discovering guest services as a summer seasonal associate in Sequoia National Park, she later decided to return to the park environment, spending most of her career working in a variety of roles. These include food and beverage, retail, procurement, recruitment, marketing, and eventually returning to Sequoia in a leadership role. In the fall of 2016, she joined the guest services team as the managing director of Rainier Guest Services before moving into her most recent position as senior director of West Coast operations. In this current role, her focus is supporting operations in both state and national parks and participating on several boards in California and Washington. In her personal time, Brandy has a passion for adventuring the natural environment and cultural landscapes throughout the U.S. and internationally. Please welcome Brandy Frederick. I'm going to turn this over to you now, Brandy.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join you and speak with you today. As Sherry said, I've been working with the national parks actually now for about 25 years and off and on. And 10 of those years were actually spent directly with retail. I have worked in 7 different national parks, and it's kind of been my way of joining the communities that I work in and traveling across the country. Today, I'd like to share a little bit about guest services and the potential opportunities that exist out there. Rainier, our guest services has been around for 107 years. And we look at providing special experiences for the guests, the visitors that are coming to join us, our staff, and the communities that we work in. As far as Rainier Guest Services, we've actually been working in Mount Rainier National Park for 51 years through a couple of different contracts that we've been awarded. And so we operate lodging, food and beverage, and retail within the park. As far as opportunities with us, there's a lot of different places that we work. So directly with the park here, as I mentioned, it's hotel, lodging, food and beverage, and then the retail side of it. We operate 4 different locations across the park, and with that, they all each have their own locations. So we have first the National Park Inn, our year-round location. This gift shop here is one of the locations that you can kind of see how we merchandise product and cross-promote stories. So there's ways that we can work with the tribes to support Native businesses and art through commerce. And that's kind of why I'm showing you here the Longmire area. We could also provide space for you guys to provide different programs and to highlight the artisan opportunities. So National Park Inn, as I mentioned, is open year-round. We've got the Jackson Visitor Center that's opened on weekends during the winter months, and then primarily open April through mid-October. This particular store focuses on souvenir and sporting goods. And then we have the Paradise Inn. Paradise Inn is considered what our flagship property. It's a 121-room lodge. We have a cafe, gift shop, dining room, and then it's open primarily May through October 1st. Then we have the Sunrise Day Lodge, and access is through the White River entrance on the eastern side of the mountain. And this is primarily driven through day traffic, hikers, and then drive-through traffic. So as we look at how we do business and we build stores out, we look at, what makes sense for the visitors coming through. And, through that, how do we connect with the visitors with land, water, the cultural history, the experiences, whether it's hiking or climbing or picnicking in the park, the regional influences that people are coming to experience in the Pacific Northwest, and then focusing on local artisans. So when we look at this, we look at both the non-personal guest interpretation and then the direct guest interpretation. So here there's opportunities to sell some Native American handcraft. And what we consider as Native American handcraft is indigenous art, craftsmanship, leatherworking, carving, basketry. And then, there's other opportunities to work with Native businesses with specialty foods, souvenirs, and if there's opportunities to work with agritourism. And then also that falls under that non-personal would be the artist profile and artist biography. So really what we're looking at is telling a story without that direct contact of verbal communication. Then there's other opportunities for cultural demonstrations. Here, we did have the Nisqually tribe that helped celebrate the grand reopening of Paradise Inn, and they came up and celebrated with dance. What we can do here is those types of programs, but then there's also interactive artisan programs. When we look at generally partnering with a retail storefront, there's a couple things to consider through this process. First, in full transparency, there's an economic benefit to all that are involved. So whether it's the artists, the local community, the tribal community, and us, who are also partnering and to help sell product. There's two different types of product sources. One, there's the wholesale side, and then second, there's the consignment. So when we look at wholesale, that's what we would consider direct purchasing. So we would buy that product directly out and sell it within the store. Consignment is what we would consider almost like a renting space from us to be able to move the product through those stores, but it's not as profitable in that for most artists. And it's also something that's not paid for until the product sells. And both types of services, there's a process to work through, and I'll go through that later. Potential hurdles to kind of overcome when you're looking at interest in working with a concessionaire in the national parks is working through pricing strategies. So when you look at wholesale, there's cost with that whether it's utilities and labor and all of that that comes with a storefront that you have to consider. So pricing strategies of what you may sell your product at an artist market you'd need to consider a little bit different with the wholesale market, because that concessionaire would have to be able to make profit off of that by paying those expenses and then buying with you. There are some challenges with some folks being able to meet the vendor requirements. They're not tremendously difficult, but I think one of the things to consider is, do you yourself want to be the individual person that's filling out the vendor requirements in the taxpayer documents? Or is there an opportunity to perhaps work with the tribe themselves and work through them coming to us and helping promote product offerings? So when you consider that, there's a lot of benefits, though, in working with a store. You're really looking at, you have consistent visibility within that store space. And with that means, there's a significant amount of traffic coming through the stores. I can tell you in Mount Rainier, we did just under 215,000 transactions in our store last year. So even though it's a short season for us that we consider, it's still a significant amount of traffic coming through the stores. The other benefit of working with the storefront is you're saving on travel expenses, so you're not constantly going and setting up stores. are working at, traveling around to different artisan events. There's also the ability to educate the store staff on your product and who you are as an artist. And then really one of the things to consider is, ultimately when you're looking at selling product, are you looking at sales volume and that long-term business health, or are you looking at, I really want to be an artisan it's selling in smaller runs, and this is the capacity I can operate at. So there's a lot of things to weigh out, and there's different ways that we can kind of help partner if there's interest in working with us. Big part of success, though, with highlighting who you are as an artist is engaging with the visitors. And on this particular event, we were lucky enough to have Hanford come up and work with us and connect with park visitors. So, when you're looking at how do you do this, it's bring the visitors into the experience. What is the collection process? How is the product dyed? Is how much time goes into making the piece and really telling the story. There's a lot of interest from people to be able to connect with anybody in how much time is spent in that piece. It's a great story for them to continue to tell long after they've been here. And I can honestly say that, some of this, you may not see that direct buy at that moment. However, in the long run, it may be something that somebody reaches back out to you within, a year or so even. So lots of things to consider, but there's great ways to engage in a space to be able to work with the visitor within the lodges themselves. So guidelines for featuring artists in the park. There's a couple of different types of events that we would consider compensating people to come up and share, and that really depends on, if you're looking as a group of individuals and you want to do an interpretive market that makes sense with the stores that you want to try to sell for that day, we would not compensate for that. And that's kind of different than when you're promoting stuff within your store or you're just doing an interactive artisan program itself. If in that case, if you're doing that interactive artisan program, that would be something that we would compensate for. Or if you're coming up to do storytelling or some other type of program. It's a very simple process in working with us directly, and the Park Service may jump in a little bit later to say, their requirements. But as far as working with us, there's a small application form, really just to kind of give us guidance in what you're looking at trying to present, what that equipment needs looks like, and how much length of time would be involved. And so we go through that process and vetting it out. And it's also another opportunity to say, are you working with your cultural centers, and are they going to participate in any way? So through that process, we work through a signed agreement. We would also need to set you up a vendor if you're looking for compensation, or it was that type of program that we would compensate for. And then supplying an artisan profile or bio. The biggest thing for us to be able to help promote this would be, at a minimum, we'd want 1 month in advance notice with everything kind of agreed upon so we could help market the event. And then, but ideally 3 months out is what we would be looking for. On event day, it's a fairly simple process. Show up half an hour early. We'd help you set up with your equipment needs, and then make sure that you have a physical copy of the artisan profile, or send it to us up front, and we can help print that out and get you set up. Some of the best practices that I've seen in working with different artisans over the years is really making sure that there's a tie back to the tribe and that there's some type of interpretive story that we can put on display next to that program that's going on. And it also allows more engaging interest and may even bring them back to your cultural centers, and we can cross-link and do things like that to help promote through that process. So when we look at cross-linking, what that means is really it's an opportunity to enhance the marketing efforts. It's us to be able to tell your story. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Can you hear me there?
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. So with the marketing, it's our ability to be able to get the word out so that there's more engagement with the visitors. It draws interest, certainly an opportunity to directly, if you have a website or you have your own social media, we can cross you there with the links. We can also create a page that actually talks to a highlighted program that's coming up as well. So it brings that engaging interest. So there you go. So with that, sorry, I am having a few technical difficulties there. I'm going to have to close my screen for a moment. So when we look at creating an artist profile, I'd like to give you a little bit of hints of what needs to happen there. So working through this, you want to make it short and simple. You get kind of straight to the point. There's two different things. There's the artist profile, there's the artist bio. The biography is a lot longer. The actual profile would be shorter and succinct. In the beginning, you really want to talk about, what is that opportunity to get out first and foremost. It's talking about the art itself, what type of artist you are, if you're self-taught, if it's a formal education, and focus on what motivates you. And then bring in the personal ties, the tribes, and if you want to share your story in more detail. But starting when it comes to an retail and engagement with the visitors, you really want to start with the key things first, which is about the art and why you're engaging them, because they're stopping to see what you're about. Be authentic, make it short and to the point. You can include a small photo. I put a couple of recommendations on the slide to be able to say, if you're doing jewelry, for instance, or vases, you can do a very small 2x2 type of card that tells your story, whether it's foldable or it's long. You can also do a 4x6 vertical kind of story that way. And then here we have some samples of what might help you be successful. So looking through this, you have
Hey, Brandy.
yes.
Real quick, can you fix your camera?
Can you see me now?
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So looking through this, here are some samples that I pulled off of a website that talks about a basket weaver in the process. So if you don't want to put your photo, that's an option. But if you do, there's a small option in the corner or an example there. So it all depends on how long you'd like to make it. Then, here's another couple of examples, again, short and to the point. I find personally that when if you're taking photos, take a photo of yourself in action. or, while you're making something or collecting something. And I think it kind of helps tell your story a little bit better. Here's another example of a different artisan. And we can always help set a template to help you through that process, so that you're working through what you need to get told. Then it comes down to the vendor registration process. And really, with that, we have an opportunity to meet directly with you, review the product, kind of highlight and look through, what makes sense for the location you're working with. Talk through the pricing structure and see if that's something that you really would like to do. Then we have a complete vendor registration form process, which is really, it's a simple form, but you may need some help and guidance in filling that out, and the taxpayer form. And we're happy to sit with you through that process. We're also happy to do another webinar if there's a larger group that is interested in doing this. So you can directly reach out to me, and I will put you in contact with the retail buyer in the accounting department. And again, though, I'm here to help through that process. So here's some photo credits just of where some of the photos came from throughout the presentation. And then I think that's all I have really to share this morning. But if there's some questions, I'd certainly like to help answer those.
Thank you, Brandy. We appreciate all of the information. What a great opportunity for Native-owned businesses, Native artists to be able to participate in the parks and to tell their stories. I love that, when you're talking about Hanford McLeod from Nisqually being in the park. And I know Hanford, so I know he's very charismatic and can really draw that crowd in there. But that's kind of what it takes to get people interested in what you're doing. But all the while, telling your story, telling the story about your tribe, about your culture. And so I think that's so important.
It certainly helps with visibility. And visitors really are looking for information for you to engage with them and share with them. So
Yeah, because I noticed, like, even when I shop, I love to talk to the artist and find out where they're from, see if we're related, and then find out some of the, I guess, the resources that they're using to create that piece of art. And
absolutely.
let's see, here's a comment here. I love this process, sets you up for success in other opportunities that elevate the artist and vendor and their work. I've known artists that have gone through this and are able to represent their company, their nation, and the skillful craft that they have learned and are eager to share. So I'm just wondering if there are others out there on today that have gone through this process, or even that are looking to go through this process.
Is there perhaps some hesitation of why you haven't come, or maybe even not knowing that there's concessionaires out here that can, help be allies in promoting your business?
So I think Marilyn has some good points here. She talks about the volume of product is not always consistent. If handmade, it can be difficult to keep up with expectations to deliver. How do you handle these situations?
So those situations, if you have, a lot of the times those are one-of-a-kind pieces, and that's okay. But I think kind of coming in with a collection of pieces, whether, let's say it's jewelry, and you have maybe a dozen pieces that we can highlight in one area in a glass case. with a small bio. That's an opportunity to do that. Handcraft or craftsmanship in general, we understand that the volume's not going to be there, but we look at floor space and how we measure the success of it off of how many times you're kind of turning product in that space. So if there's a short window where you're not able to succeed in backfilling that, then we can certainly use something else temporarily to work through the process. But ideally, we're communicating with you of movement of product so that you can timely make it in time for when we anticipate more needs. And just like, where I was saying that we had over 214 or just under 215,000 transactions, that it really comes to us as how do we merchandise it? How do we promote it? And promoting it is you helping us promote it by telling that story. It's, everything from lighting that focuses on it and how creative we can be within those displays, all kind of ties in. And where we would really look at trying to place more craft items is in that flagship store at Paradise Inn, because it's more of an intimate experience for people to be able to walk through and shop at a quieter pace than some of the faster operations.
So, you're talking specifically about Rainier National Park, but as you know, many of our people are on or near or reside near other national parks across the country. Is becoming a vendor the same type of process for all other park locations?
Yeah, they're very similar, to be honest. It's really, most parks have a retail buyer. And, being able to reach out to that buyer and just letting them know that you're an artisan or you have a business or enterprise that seems to make sense, that could support maybe that specialty food side or the souvenir side of business even, when I say specialty food, it could be candies that you're making, anything that jerky, something along those lines, or soaps. That makes sense, and you can reach out to those buyers of those locations, and I'm sure there's many that are eager to work with you.
Is there a directory that lists all national parks for gift shop contacts?
No, I think if you go directly to the websites of, I think to that question, there's an opportunity for us to be better at sharing that information, honestly. I think if you went to contact us within a website and asked your question, those are filtered through people, and they would put you in contact with the right person. So it's not just a bot process or anything like that. There's usually somebody answering those questions.
Okay, and then here's another question. Do artists need to reapply each year? And are native artists featured in a certain area of the gift shops?
Well, that is our goal, to be honest, to have a featured section that highlights the artist. Generally, in partnerships, you want to be talking throughout the process of, how are things working? How do we enhance this? How do we work together to make this more successful? And through that, you're pacing at a level that both of you understand how well things are successful. Going through an application process to be the vendor is not necessarily required every year, but that partnership side is really about that communication and transparency of how do we support each other in this growth. Did that answer that question clearly enough?
Yeah, I think you did, yes. And then Donnie gave us a link for a list of authorized National Park Service concessionaires. And he said that we can sort by services. Retail operations is one of the options, and by park.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Donnie. And yes, Melina said that you did answer her question. So Brandy, do you have any other successes that you can share with us?
I've worked in, as I mentioned earlier, in several different parks, and a lot of the times there can be a distributor that sells your product, and so working with storefronts, I would say that that's not a necessary step, because generally you're paying them a fee to move your product as well. So I'd really look at, try to reach out directly to storefronts or the concessionaire and share who you are. And you'll get that time spent back from the people in the park trying to promote the opportunities that exist. So, distributors are not necessary. And really, I just want to keep talking about the fact, people are looking to interact and know the cultural heritage of these places. And I think this is really an opportunity for everybody to understand that we can all be allies in getting that story out there. But there's space to be able to come up and share your product, try it out, even if it's a one-time thing, just to see if this works for you and how interesting it is. You don't have to do that long-term commitment at first. So it's just something to really think about. I can tell you, as a child, I grew up, my parents took us out to the Southwest, and, my first experience was Canyon de Chelly and going on tours and meeting specific artisans to be able to buy a product, which actually kind of promoted, my lifestyle in the long run. So it impacts generations to come, and really left a strong memory for me. And that's part of, my interest in being able to work with folks.
We have a few more questions. For wholesale products not sold during the season, do you all have them online for visitors to purchase in off season?
So we do have an online store, which is very relatively new for us, and we certainly can highlight it on there. And with that, that's where, that bio that we can cross-link even with our website to that other website of the online store kind of helps, and we can do social media to help promote that.
Okay. And then does the National Park Service put a markup on the original purchase price? How does a percentage filter to the artist?
So when you're looking at wholesale specifically, through that process, you look at what you sell at an artist market, and you're directly making that profit off of that. Your expenses is obviously the materials and your time spent on that. When you look at selling wholesale, because there's a cost for that person or that company that you're working with, you really want to look at, okay, so through this, you bring that pricing down to a realistic price that they can mark up to be able to move it and absorb the costs that are associated. So, I've worked with different folks where it's a third of the markup, or it's maybe twice the cost of what was brought in. And consignment's a little bit different though, because that could be a split depending on whatever concessionary that you're working with, a 60-40 split, a 55-45 split, but you're not making any money until that product is actually sold. So it's almost like paying rent to some degree of it. Well, you're not paying rent, but you're paying for it to sit there. And they're making that profit once that product's sold, and then you're making the profit off of that when that product's sold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just seeing if there was other responses.
You
Any
know, you
other?
have to find the right concessionaire and the right buyer is really going to have dialogue with you to help you, because um, you know, it doesn't do any of us any good if the product isn't moving, or, you know, one is not a comfortable partner with the other. So generally you'll find with a buyer that they're going to be very clear about, you know, this is how things work. This is what I think we could sell it at. And this is how we help make that happen.
Mhm. Right, and I think what I heard earlier is that it's really important to, you know, when we look up your local park, start building that relationship um, with those representatives, and start getting your product into that park by following that process. Let's see, there is a follow-up question. To clarify, for wholesale by 1/3 markup means the park would make the 1/3 and the artist 2/3?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not the park, but the concessionaires. So there's a little bit difference where we're on contract to manage the operations within the park. So there's the National Park Service and then the concessionaires that are managing those units. So what I've seen in the past is somebody has said if they're trying to promote, and this is a very new process for them, let's say something cost $30 and that you wanted to sell it to us directly. We would generally try to sell that at $60. If we were really trying to make it to do a test drive, we could bring that down slightly so we weren't making as much profit. But generally what you're trying to do is say, how is this equally equitable for both parties? Because we obviously have a cost from utilities and labor and all of that's associated with the storefront business.
Overhead costs, yeah. Let's see. How do you ensure that artists meet the law regarding authentic American Indian art?
That's a really good question. You know, I think through this, we're trying to, I mean, most can tell if it's cast product, and that there is the opportunity for cast, meaning that, you know, you have a pattern that you're making off of that same piece. That would be handled a little bit differently in pottery versus on handcraft. And through that, usually they're certifying that this is accurate. But I think I would have to come back and look into that a little bit more. You know, essentially we've been working off of trust in that process through our dialogue.
So do you have mostly right now, Brandy, in your gift shops, the Native American art that you do have, is that from the local artists,
So
local tribes?
I'm sorry. What
From
was
local tribes, local artists?
So what we would be looking for is from the local tribes to be able to promote. Some parks have a little bit different, broader reach. You know, currently what we're looking for is the local tribes. And unfortunately, we're not there yet. We don't have many people that we're doing business with. We have agencies that are working off of Native American art and producing it that way.
Okay, so there's a lot of opportunity there.
There's a lot of opportunity, and it's, you know, it's a slow process, and we understand it's a slow process of getting the word out that we're here, and there's opportunities to work together. I've you know, I've been to a couple of different events, whether it was fundraising for the Squaxin tribe, and I saw some incredible artistry there. I walk through some of the facilities, whether it's the casinos or the museums that have the inspiration or the art that does some of like the casinos and in the lodging side show a lot more of the local artistry than you get to see in other markets. So, you know, I try to show up to events within the community to see what's out there. And I've reached out to a couple of people that I'm talking with at this time, but you know, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to work together, whether it's this year or next year. We're very open to being able to share some space.
Okay, and then Cynthia has a question, logistics question. How are items typically delivered to sales location?
So if you have here, you're working with Rainier Guest Services, you can ship them. If it's a local tribe, you know, we can certainly help pick up at a location. But you know, shipping is part of that process in general. Or like I said, you know, you can drive up here and meet with us in person. So there's a couple different opportunities there. What we do though is we don't send vehicles into the park. We would directly take them within our warehouse outside the park, make sure they're priced and in the retail systems to be able to promote it accurately.
Okay. Melena is saying that it's very important to verify native artist authenticity, that there have been some non-native people charged for selling native made art. And I think we see that, you know, all across the country. And then she's asking, when are you all deciding on products for the upcoming season? Is it now too early to contact parks?
Absolutely not too early to contact parks. So particularly on the western coast, you're looking at, you know, we tend to buy in the winter months to be able to have everything set up during the summer. You know, so it really depends on the locations. By April, everything's mostly set for the season. I wouldn't discourage you from reaching out past April, but now is a good time to start talking to local concessionaires.
Mm-hmm. So Brandy, do you have any promotional content for this opportunity that we can share with our members?
As far as our links or explain to me what you're looking for in promotional content.
Well, so this is a great opportunity for Native artists, Native owned businesses. And so we would like to get that information out to them. So I was just wondering if maybe you have a flyer or if it's on your website.
Yes. We can certainly send a flyer out to you guys to
Oh,
distribute.
perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions out there? You guys have been doing really great with the questions. Love it. Oh, I see one. Are there preferences given to Washington state tribes for Rainier?
Yes. We are looking for local tribes, and it's really, you know, those with ancestral ties to Mount Rainier itself, whether it's within or surrounding the park boundaries. That would be the first, and then we would expand through Washington. And that's really kind of, you know, how we partner with the National Park Service and the restrictions there.
Great. Thanks, Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions out there? Well, you got a lot of questions this morning, Brandy. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning and sharing your information on the concessionaire program, the process. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And we're so thankful to have wonderful partners like you in Mount Rainier National Park to ensure we're providing quality education for our Native-owned tourism businesses. And I also want to have you all save the dates for the following upcoming events through IANTA. We have our Go International 2-day training. It will be held here in Albuquerque next week, February 6th and 7th at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. And it's not too late to join us. In fact, we'd welcome that. Registration is open on our website at ianta.org. And then also want to invite you to our 26th annual American Indigenous Tourism Conference, which will be hosted by the Tunica Biloxi tribe at the Paragon Casino Resort, October 28th through the 31st in Marksville, Louisiana. So we're hoping to see you all there. It's going to be a great time getting together with everybody, learning from each other, and just having a great time at the AITC. Again, you can visit our website at ianta.org to learn more about our educational program offerings, like the webinar you're participating in today. So that's it as far as the programming today. Again, thank you, Brandy, and thank you all for attending this morning.
Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. And I apologize for the technical difficulties this morning. Don't hesitate to reach out though, please. And have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.